Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed Smith, and my journey began in fantasy football back in 1998, playing with friends. But what's become of that journey is something that really began in earnest the summer of 2020 during the COVID pandemic. It's important to realize what your goal is through fantasy football. Do you play with friends or people that you don't know? Or is it something that you try to do for fun or profit? Maybe both. How it began for me really was I began a new career as a mortgage broker, and the pandemic happened, and I reverted back to some of my past, like many of us do, to make a living. And I began trading stocks. I got COVID-19 and realized that my attention span wasn't good enough to maintain trading stocks every day to make a living. And I was laying on the couch and I was drafting a team on Sleeper. Shout out to Sleeper. And thought to myself, I think I could actually do this better. Now, there was a little bit of false hope because I had joined a fantasy league that I had won the last 2 years in a row in a Dynasty league, and I felt like I won easily. So I come in with a basis of I have this long-time league that I've won the last 2 years when I've devoted time to it. And I thought, gee, I think this is just a matter of devoting time and getting a result. So that's kind of how it all began for me. I began to think, I think I can trade players like I trade at companies in the stock market or stocks. So I thought of players as commodities with market share and that sort of thing, and wanted to begin to do that. And I also thought, I think I can generate value, just me, 1 in 12 owners, 1 in 14 owners, 1 in 16 owners, based on market trends that I see in the real estate market. So based on supply and demand. So as I began to look back, I was like, people told me different things about how I play, and there was tells to how I play. And I thought it was very important to realize and understand those tells so that I could, better play at a high level. So as the journey began, which now after my second full year of doing this with trackable stats and things of my tendencies, I have 75 leagues with varying scoring forms that have allowed me to kind of see what works, see what doesn't work, all inside of a very basic blueprint that I think most people just overlook. So very similar to how people trade stocks, how people utilize the real estate market. And I've actually watched the owner, David Tepper of the Carolina Panthers, and kind of his just how he maneuvers around, because his background is in stock trading, just like mine. So I guess I try to pull from people that I see doing well, not doing so well, and try to figure out what do they do, what don't they do. I do think that people in general, whether it's trading crypto, trading NFTs, trading stock, whatever it is, they act impulsively. And so I don't think fantasy football is any different in the dynasty game. So people will have this impulse reaction to make a trade or just trade to trade. And so I see successful high stakes players tell me all the time, don't trade to trade. Don't make a trade unless it makes your team better. Minimize loss. Control the market. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't let players retire on your roster. Minimize risk. Those are all things that happen in all the other aspects of our life that if you want to be successful in the fantasy industry, in my opinion, you need to also put those into play. So the other thing that I think that most fantasy players miss is that they don't have patience. And so most times the deal you don't make is better than the deal you do make. So if I were to look back at all the many trades I made over the 2 years that I've been doing this through the widespread market, I would find that most times it's the trades that I rejected that made more sense than the trades I actually made. And then sometimes patience will outlast the to get you the value that you're looking for. So sometimes you have to send the trade to maneuver the market to where you're trying to accomplish. So Now, let's apply that to how it really all began and how I realized the emotional toll was there in the fantasy space. And that I signed up for an IDP league and I had no idea what IDP was, had no idea about anything. And here I am in a veteran draft to draft DP players, and I'm like, this is clueless. So I went back and just did some simple research and said, okay, 2019, 2018, 2017, in the scoring format I was in, all the players were different year to year. Like the top players were different year to year to year. So I began to believe that un, I don't play a lot of fantasy baseball, but in the holds category in fantasy baseball, it basically middle relievers change year to year to year to year. And there's never any correlation that I could ever figure out that made sense. So I kind of went with that premise and said, until I understand scoring, I don't care about IDP players. Now, that may seem very sloppy in a dynasty format, but I thought I'll recover. I'm just going to figure out who scores. And then, best I can tell, it's middle linebacker or it's off ball linebackers on bad teams get the most tackles. And that may or may not be true, but it just felt like that was the sum of the parts to getting a good IDP team. So I decided to draft just like I normally would. And in the old days, I was known as a drafter of lots and lots of running backs. It was one quarterback leagues, and I thought handcuffing running backs was the dumbest thing ever because I thought if you pick Alexander Madison as the handcuff of Dalvin Cook, I'll just pick Josh Jacobs. And then I can put Josh Jacobs in the same spot if I don't need Dalvin Cook to get hurt to have a usable asset. If Dalvin Cook gets hurt, I put in Jacobs. If Dalvin Cook is on bye, I put in Jacobs. If Jacobs get hurt, then I have another one. And I just would load up on running backs and I would draft receivers late. And I'd always find Robbie Anderson or I would find those kind of Mike Williams. I would just find T Higgins that everybody's down on after Jamar Chase is drafted. I would just use the rule of draft a lot of them and you'll figure it out. And so I applied that here, except for that I was playing in a Superflex league, and I just kind of began to think I hate handcuffing. But the reason I hate handcuffing is we don't know where the the running backs are going to come from, and when the handcuff comes in, usually they only get a portion of the starter's snaps. So it's a all percentage game. So and then we look further. Well, if I look at last post or preseason, we had Akers get hurt, we had Dobbins get hurt, and Sony Michel wasn't even on the team when Akers got hurt, and Dobbins gets hurt, and we have Devonta Freeman, running the ball, or Latavius Murray running the ball, and they weren't even blips on the radar. And so, if I'm drafting and trying to figure that all out, or Dante Foreman for Derrick Henry, I don't figure any of that out. So I'm basically shooting darts now. So if I'm going to shoot darts, I want to shoot high percentage darts. So it made me believe that at the beginning of the year, if Kyler Murray got hurt, I knew that without a doubt, Colt McCoy was going to back up. And even better than that, Colt McCoy was going to get 100% of the snaps or very close to it. And so I felt like backup quarterbacks made a lot more sense in a super flex 12-team league where people had to start basically 24 throughout. And when I started picking backup quarterbacks in round 22, I think that's where it began. I think I was picking everybody, and then I was started to pick quarterbacks, the rest of the starters first, and I think I got to round 30, and I'm still picking starters. I'm picking bad starters like Tyrod Taylor and just those low end 25 to 32 quarterbacks, and then people start talking whatever on the board, and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking to myself, I got 8 starting quarterbacks now, and there's only 32 of these. And then I thought, you know what? I still don't know who these good IDP players are. So I think the last 8 picks, I'm going to pick 8 starters, and I'll probably cut them all before we even get to day one. Like I probably will never have any of these starters on my team because I really am clueless. What I'm going to definitely do is I'm going to pick from round 32, I think is where the backup quarterbacks actually started, until around round 44. I just picked the backup quarterbacks in the systems that I thought made sense. So that would be Chad Henne if Pat Mahomes gets hurt. It would be in this year, it would have been Mitch Trubisky if Josh Allen gets hurt. Because I'm thinking these guys will come in and they'll put up number quarterback 25 stats in a week, and that's still better than the wide receiver 8 or 9 on somebody's team. So I'm still getting that, and somebody's going to need that for their quarterback spot, which then becomes a second or third round rookie pick for me. And so I'm setting a stage for down the line with this quarterback drafting. Most people didn't follow that, so I got ridiculed pretty hard. And case in point, I think I finished 11th place that year, and I'll get to that specific team when I break down each of the 75 teams over the next 75 days. So we have some things coming there. But that team, just to give you a blurb, finished in second place in year 2. So it went from second to last to second place. And so I feel like the system works. And now I've done the system throughout 75 teams in different variations based on different scoring, different things. And quarterback supply and demand is a real thing, just like the NFL. So it's very similar to what the NFL owners, general managers, coaches really believe. And that's why things happen like Jalen Hurts gets drafted by Philly, or maybe Jordan Love gets drafted by Green Bay. Quarterbacks are king in the NFL. And I guess I thought, well, in fantasy, it probably isn't that far since they are the number one scoring item. Now, I've applied some different analytics, and I'll share that as we go. I feel like there's lots of different nuances based on scoring as to how valuable a quarterback may be. But the gist of the whole premise of 75 leagues going from startup to profitability is that it's based around the quarterback, in my opinion. Um, I I then begin to utilize supply and demand to draft quarterbacks. So I try to hold the supply and push the demand. And so I make trades not necessarily to build the best roster in the world, but I make trades to control the cost of of a given position player and talent level, so that other people are forced to pay the prices that I set. And so I basically control. And it's not about winning year one for me. I amortize over a 10-year basis. And what I'm trying to do is get 3 times my money over 10 years. So, and what I mean by that is so if I basically want to get to, if we take the entry fee times 10 for 10 years, I want to make 3 times that amount over the course of that 10 years. And then I feel like it was a profitable situation, because if I'm in the market, the rule of 7 is basically a normal principle in business, and you can in investing. And so you can usually double your money in 7 years. So I guess I'm looking to triple my money in 10 years. So I'm looking to make this even more profitable than it would be if I was in a given situation investing the money in the market. So I took that money, I took a little bit of money, I guess you could say, and I began to invest it in fantasy football, feeling that there's a lot more variance to the people I play with and a lot less discipline to the people I trade with, if you will, than there was in the stock market. So that's what makes this successful at an entry level. And so I've seen that growth over the course of this 2 years that I'm tracking. So played before the 2 years began, but really the habit, if you will, has started just 2 short years ago. And then I've tracked it, and I'm going to be going to my third rookie draft here after the 75 breakdowns of these teams. And then we're going to see where they go. I recently posted a draft that I did in 2019 with just friends, and I posted that draft. And coming out of that draft, I really think I had either the best team or the second to best team in a 10-team league. And I had that draft board, and I posted it, and then I posted my team now, which I finished as the 6th seed out of 10, which isn't very good, to be honest. That's bad. And I found it hard because of the scoring system to monopolize. He said positions because it was, kind of predated my setup, if you will. And so I'm playing it out, and I'm seeing how when I don't do the blueprint, it changes the whole dynamic of where I am and how I do. I'm relying upon making good speculative picks, where when I implement the strategy, it's more of you just take the next available player, and you just take what's given, and you just take value when it falls, and you keep very unemotionally just doing the same thing over and over again, and you trust your process. And more times than not, the process works. So with that's but what was interesting to me when I posted those two pictures, people thought that the team today was great and the team back in 2019 was terrible. And what that told me is that our that we just humanly think, have an opinion that maybe isn't factual. So there's something there. When we start to trade and start to maneuver, we can utilize the psychology of what people think against them. So that's kind of the long and short of the whole blueprint of the Fantasy Clown Show. And as we go over the next 75 days, once a day, we'll break down each of my teams, and I'll let you laugh at me. I'll let you tell me how terrible I am and how terrible the team is and how the team will never win. I've heard those all, so I know that they're there. But maybe, just maybe, something will trigger you and it will help you in your fantasy journey to win fantasy football games against other people, hopefully not my leagues, because I don't want you to beat me at my own game. But I feel like it's a tried and true strategy that I've seen just over the short period of time that seems to work with the volatility of football. So thanks for bearing with me in this inaugural journey that I have sharing this information, and I appreciate you just taking the time to give me 15 minutes of your precious time, and I look forward to bringing back Team One tomorrow. Thank you.